Okay, so this is going to be my first interview. I really appreciate you taking your time and to talk to me, Kika. I appreciate the core harness. The Ki-RO. I really think that this is the missing link on helping military and veteran populations with back issues. So, if you would, stay with me and enjoy the interview. Alright, so those that don't know, this is a personal friend of mine. I was grateful to have met and gained some valuable insight from for my interning at Bomberitos. So this is Kika. So if you would, what are some that you do for Bomberitos, and then you end up having your own company, and then also the Ki-RO concept creator. So if you could go more into that, I appreciate it.
My name is Kika Mela. I am a licensed massage therapist. I have a degree in exercise science. I've been a massage therapist about 25 years now, and I've been helping Bomberitos since 2006. So I'm part of, our company is part of the medical team for Bomberitos, so we kind of assist in the massage, and we specialize in a technique called muscle activation techniques. So we specialize in that, and we provide that for all of Bomberito clients as well as our own personal business. It's been since I've been working with Bomberito that I had to create the Ki-RO Core Trainer, which developed the Ki-RO concepts. So the Ki-RO Core Trainer is an exercise harness device, kind of, this Ki-RO Core Trainer here. And we've had to create that as a way to help train the core, because as a muscle activation technique specialist, I kept having to go back to treat the core a lot. They could have had six-pack abs and could have held planks and did all kinds of amazing things, but they started if they had hamstring problems or groin problems or even shoulder problems, sometimes I would come back and have to end up treating the core, and that helped it the most. So we started to see this, and as I was learning biomechanics on a higher level than at the time, it was something kind of new, and I started to notice that as I added real specific exercises to reinforce the muscles that I reactivated or encouraged to work a little bit better, as I was very specific, I started to notice that this had a tremendous benefit, and it made my sessions last longer. So the MAT sessions were able to almost get a shot in the arm of steroid. They were much better, would last longer. But I started to think, why am I doing this on my table? This should be done in the weight room. This should be done on the turf. It should be something that the coaches can do. And we started to add specific exercises as a baseline foundation for just general core strength and core endurance. So they started to add these specific exercises, and then it was like, well, we need something better, because if you do a single arm band walk or a belt walk or a sled walk, you have to hold your arm in a certain way, so you lose the mechanics of motion, or it would slip off, or it was really hard to just direct it at the core. Because one of the things I hate, or I should say is my pet peeve, is if you have a core exercise and you use everything else but the core to do the exercise, unless that was your goal. You might need to use everything to do a wood chop, that's your goal, but if you really want it to be a core exercise, if you take the arms out, if you take the hips out, then it's more specific to the core, and I needed a device to be able to do that.
And it's a wonderful device.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That. Congratulations, he won. We had a giveaway, nothing related.
Sweet.
We did have a giveaway, and he won that giveaway. So
I need to play the lotto now.
Yeah. So now he gets to use Ki-RO. Yeah.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for entering.
So the conversation that we ended up having on the phone some time ago, right, when you were asking all the rest of the professionals in the industry about what the core meant to us. So did you ever find the reason behind that, or like a structured answer that you actually like, since you deal with it, more than anybody else, really?
So I interviewed almost 100 people, specifically about their thoughts on the core, how they train the core, what they define the core as. And I ran the gamut from either an intern just in the profession, or a medical intern just in the profession, up to NFL trainers that have been in the business for 30 years, Major League Baseball, strength and conditioning coaches, trainers. So from that wide perspective, I got anything from just the abs, just the abs, to anything from the hip to the shoulder, and then anything from the knees to the neck. That's the core. So there was no clear-cut, common, this is the perfect definition of that core.
No commonality about anything.
There was segments, depending on their level of education. You could tell the progression of education as to the more consistent definition. But it's hard, basically from the hips to the shoulders, I think was the most common as to describing the musculature that's involved in the core. And that includes the pelvic floor and the diaphragm. So some people focus more on that, that's everything for them. Some people feel it's back, some people feel it's abdominals only. For me, I like the hips to the shoulders, but you got to remember some of those muscles cross over into the neck and some of those cross down into the knees. So it's the component of the body that kind of helps prevent motion, absorb and redirect forces. It can't just be a immovable object, motion or action or segment of the body. It's an anchoring point for everything else. It enables the hips and the arms to work at the highest level that they can, and it transfers forces from one direction to the other or back and forth. So it's an important component, but just like there's no most important thing. It's just one aspect, and it was one aspect I felt that can sometimes be trained in a way that might not be what people think it is.
Right.
They think they're doing really specific core, but they're actually doing a lot of hip flexor exercises, and so their core acts as an anchor only, which might be great, but their hip flexors get burned out, or their back starts to hurt, or their hips start to hurt or their shoulders, because now they're challenging it multiple times when they think they're just doing core, and they just did a workout on their legs and they did more leg workout, but they think they're doing core. It was interesting to see the variation of how people address it, how people define it, and how people train it. And for not only static stability, which is a big thing, everybody's into anti-rotation, but also into dynamic stability, which once you start moving in motion, everything changes. The forces change. You have to be able to, the core has to be an anchor, but it also has to be a flexible, solid, strong anchor to really be effective. And when that's not, I think that's when problems arise. If your core is not doing its job, then other muscles work harder, or different parts of the core work harder. Let's say your low back muscles have to work harder than they are, or your hips, your glutes have to end up being the ones to hold the whole upper body up. So it can vary along a spectrum to the necessity and the needs and the problems that arise. Even just sitting down, like if you're sitting at a desk all day long.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Guilty as charged.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I've seen is a lot of times the glutes don't work as well as they could. The core might be dependent, but if you're always in this position and the head is yes.
So I'm starting now.
Let me tell you, the military has it right when they talk about posture of being upright. It's not just showing confidence and being upright, looking at the world, but it actually puts you in a better mechanical advantage. So I'll give you an example, okay? So this is something that I talk to my athletes about because they're always being tested, especially when they're about to go into the NFL and have to do different tests. So a common test is like the empty can test to check your shoulder stability. So if I took your hand here and I rotated here, you're supposed to hold this position, okay? I'm not a physical therapist or anything, but this is something that gets tested a lot. You're gonna hold this position, okay? Ready, and hold.
Oh,
for real, for real. Don't try to be relaxed. Ready, and hold. And I don't have to push hard, and he's affected by my little rinky-dink thing. Now sit up nice and tall. Sit up nice and tall. Ready? Oh, I don't want to change what I did, but my angle has to change. Ready, and hold. And he becomes stronger. Now relax, slouch. Ready, and hold. And I shouldn't be able to do that so easy. his posture changed. When he sat up straight, his arm and shoulder, everything was at a better mechanical advantage. And the muscles and everything was had a little bit more advantage, but when you slouch. So if you're slouching, also, these things come forward. These get shorter, these get longer. It's like being stretched out. If I took your elbow and I stretched it out for a couple of hours, you would hate me. But you do that to your poor back all the time, and your neck, and you do that all the time, and you think nothing of it. But if I had this is about, well, maybe 5 pounds for you, sorry.
Maybe a little bit less.
If you had like a real heavy brain like me, like 10 pounds or something, if you put that 10 pounds on this and you just had it there,
right,
it would make a change. It would affect it. Like, this would not be happy at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we do that all the time. So part of the thing that I wanted to do with the Ki-RO in regards to that is, one, put it on. People tell me as soon as they put it on, it makes them sit upright. It's like almost like a tactical cue to sit upright. So when they do their exercises, we already have a little bit of that problem kind of addressed, because it's a tactical cue to sit up straight. It kind of makes you sit up straight. It's not forcing your shoulders back like some of the shirts that are out there, or some of the different apparatus that are out there that forces it. But it's a tactical cue to kind of sit up straight. And then we can be real specific as to what we want to address in the core and stuff.
That's good. Yeah, I think there's a huge misrepresentation of what everybody thinks about the core, and like, hey, let's just go and set up a bunch of planks. And then I'm guilty for it too, but at least I'll end up going and trying to use this and then actually encompass some people's knowledge and hopefully bring that to light, a little bit more in the future.
All that's really important as well. I don't want to, I'm not trying to take away from, say, the anti-rotation or the rotation trainings where you use a lot of planks, because that's all you have. Mm-hmm. But what if you had a shoulder injury? Or what if you couldn't get down on the floor to do a plank, like you had a back problem and you still needed to train the core? What are all the exercises that are typical? You get on the floor, you lay on your back, you are on your hands and knees, or you're using an exercise where you have to do here, you have to do there. And what if your arms were the weak link? Or what if you didn't have an arm and you've lost something, and now everything is one-sided? So that way you lose some functionality somewhere in the chain, because it's every time you do exercise, you're pulling with one arm. If you do a deadlift, even if you have an apparatus, it's still not quite the same.
Yeah, you get the imbalance.
You get an imbalance, and that can affect you everywhere. So one thing I liked is because if you did have either an injury or a missing limb, or you couldn't do traditional exercises on the rehab side of things, or even if you're trying to progress with a limitation, say, like that, then this is something that you could balance precisely. And you can challenge those muscles that have been atrophied because they didn't have the stimulation. And I could target your left side erector muscles only by using the Ki-RO and pulling from this direction and have you do exercises. That's just one way. So it's if you can't do some of those traditional exercises, and it's super lightweight, it's easy to pack in a bag, it's not very cumbersome. Mm-hmm. You just need something to attach to, and then you can do the whole thing. And I think it really adds an aspect that is missing, because then it can also challenge other exercises, your lower body workouts. You can actually do squats with it if you had. Yes, you can do squats with it. Acts like what a belt squat is, right?
Right.
And that kind of helps protect the back from a loaded spinal axial loading. So you can actually do a belt squat or a deadlift using it. You can do lunges with it. It gives a lower body resistance. We can actually focus on scapular work, which a lot of shoulder problems are a result of poor scapular function, not just glenohumeral, which everyone's always doing glenohumeral work. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a way that we figured out we can challenge the scapula without involving the damaged rotator cuff.
Right, just move it independently.
We can actually use it independently and not have to worry about aggravating tissue that's already aggravated. So if you can't lift up a 2-pound dumbbell because of a problem, but you can retract the scapula against a resistance, it's a way to take that arm out of the equation. and take that damaged tissue out of the equation.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I really wish that more people would end up seeing, you know, the functionality of the Ki-RO.
To kind of help it along.
Yeah, especially since you end up mentioning members that don't end up having other parts, or like, hey, veterans or military that happen to get blown up, God forbid. But, you know, they're at a very big disadvantage for only working, you know, one part of the system. And I believe this is probably the connector for all that, so they can have a more encompassing, you know, health and fitness, you know, for their own selves.
Yeah, I would love to see it applied in that way a little bit more, because that's, you gotta take care of the people.
Oh yeah.
That took care
Absolutely.
of us. You really do. And if I would be so grateful if I could help somebody in that way. That would really make me proud to have been a part of that.
Hopefully we can end up bringing it up to light for everybody else to see. Yeah. Cool. All right. So for everybody else that doesn't know, how do you actually figure out your size or need for the actual strength, or I guess like capacity of the Ki-RO?
Okay, so there's different things. We have different strengths, different styles, and then you have sizes within that. Our most low end in regards to resistance, that it's not designed to handle a lot of load. I call this our light, because it's kind of like what we use for the rehab. This one's been beat up a lot. It's been in this environment for a couple of years now, so apologize for that. So this is our rehab harness. We use the blue. It's very lightweight polypropylene. It's very lightweight. The way it's been designed is not for a lot of resistance, not for heavy usage. It's for more of a rehab setting when you need light weights. It can hold a lot, but it wouldn't handle a lot of volume over time.
All right.
So this is one size fits the most, because I can size it smaller than me and for a very large person as well. The next one up in style and quality is, this is the Ki-RO HD for heavy duty. So this can handle a lot of load, it can handle a lot of abuse. This is the large size, which it encompasses up to a 48-inch chest down to a 36 chest. So this can expand a lot and go very small or very large. And this is made from polypropylene. It's a heavy duty polypropylene, so it's a little bit more sturdy.
Yeah.
It can handle a little bit more than that. Yes, and it holds up. It doesn't look as abused as much. Next one up, this is a small, this is mine. It's made from the polyester, so this is the highest quality that we make. We call this the HD Pro, so it's heavy duty, but it's pro. This is what our professional athletes use.
Nice.
It can take a lot of abuse. It's very strong. It can handle a lot of load, but it also, because of this, it's more. This and the polypropylene is antimicrobial, antifungal. They dry real fast. But if I was going to leave this in a car for a long time or multiple times, I would use a polyester over the polypropylene. It just handles it a little bit better and looks better longer. And it feels, if you feel the difference, the softness there against your skin. So it feels a little bit better against the skin. It's just a little bit higher quality, a little bit nicer. And you can tell the difference also, the quality. People ask me about all the time. It's like, well, is it something like, you know, that $49.99 on Amazon? Like, no. If you feel the quality, even that small size, you feel how heavy. That's about 3 pounds.
It's got some weight.
It's got some weight to it. It's very high quality material, very high quality construction.
Nice.
As opposed to something along these lines, this is
more
our
flimsy.
lowest end. It's a lot more flimsy. It does the job, but it's not as comfortable. But for a rehab setting, it's perfect. It's less intimidating. That's also why we use the blue, because if I have some elderly ladies use it, and that's a little bit less intimidating than something along these lines.
Put on! What are you trying to do to me?
Exactly.
Right.
So sizing, we have in the HD and the Pro, we have 3 sizes. We have the small, which fits me, somebody my size. This can expand out though to 36-inch chest comfortably. It can go a little bit more if you need to, but then we start to use the strength capacity, because the less Velcro you have, the less weight you can use. So it broke 4 inches of Velcro overlap on this one, and for that one was over 200 pounds at 4 inches of overlap.
Oh, wow.
So we tell people 75 pounds because you know people are gonna go more. But that's only with 4 inches. This one has
A little bit more to
up
it.
to 9
Right.
inches of Velcro overlap. So that can hold a lot more unless you take it to the very end on either direction. And then then you start to lose the capacity for load.
And military and veterans love their Velcro, so.
Fantastic. So I didn't use a military grade, which is really quiet. They have, I tested out a lot of military grade Velcro, which is a lot quieter, but I didn't have the strength that I wanted.
Ability for it.
I wanted to be like I've had people pull a bunch of stuff with this. So that's the difference in size. So the small size is a smaller frame person. You could wear the small, maybe not. I think you're busting out a little bit. So
Yeah, for
you're definitely a
the
large.
pandemic bulking cycle. We had a little bit, right? Yeah.
So this is up to 36.
Okay.
Even if you have somebody, so if we're talking like even we have a lot of our youth use it. We have a lot of our football players. It's like the size for like a cornerback or a receiver. That's on the little bit smaller size. If you have a little bit of a bigger bones, but yet you're still the smaller size, I would go up to the large. It'd be more comfortable. This is a 2-inch width, so it's more comfortable on your shoulders and pulling. This is a 1.5.
All right.
So this is also will cut into you if you maybe fit the size, but you're a little bit bulkier, it wouldn't be as comfortable. So this is the large, and it goes from a 36 to a 48. That's what we recommend for comfortable fit. You can go a couple inches either way, but not as comfortable. And then we have an extra large, which it goes up to a 60-inch chest. And if people need it, let's say you bought a large and you have
linemen or something. Yeah.
That's for the big guys, yes. So the big our O linemen, our D linemen, they usually get an extra large. Or someone that like a power lifter, somebody that's a little bit more bulkier and thicker. If you bought a large, because most of the people maybe you work with as a trainer are in this size range, and you have one guy that needs an extra large, I do have expansor straps that you can attach to that.
Oh, nice.
To fit that one guy. I don't have them on the website, but people can always DM me or message me and talk about it, or if they have questions. I'll probably put that up on the website soon, but I do have an expansor, so just...
Yeah, that's great for other options, especially for, hey, you might get like somebody else in, and it's like, wow, they have a little bit larger size of a person. Yeah, and they're like, okay, yeah, at least have that option for them.
Yeah.
You know, they go bigger.
Right, like, I just need two more of that, too. That's what she said. I can't say that. But if they just need a little bit extra girth size, but they don't want to have to buy a whole nother harness, I have no problem doing that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why we did that for.
Love that explanation. Yeah, I want to try to fit one up on me.
Yes.
I know we ended up doing a little pre-hand, but I mean, at least to go and see to go over with the audience.
Okay, so first of all, it fits like a jacket and it fits like a glove. Let me tell you, it fits really well, and you put it on like a jacket. I see a lot of people trying to go forward, but it's just like, yes, like that, they do that. So there we go.
Sweet.
The first thing that happens is people always have it right up high on their shoulders. You need to make sure that that comes down. And this should be comfortable under the armpit. It should not be pinching anywhere. If it pinches, either it's too tight somewhere. So then we've already pre-sized this to Rick, and all he has to do is just buckle up the front. And to adjust it, all they have to do is bring this to the back to make it easier. You pull it like that, bring those back to the front, and you're good to go. So I'll give them a little bit of extra space here. See what happens if I have it there, then it's a little bit harder, it gets stuck. But as long as it's in front, then you have the capacity to attach it to whatever resistance you want on your own.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll work.
Let me get a little resistance band for you.
So we're now going to go over some functionality on how the actual Ki-RO works.
So this right here is an extensor strap, because if you notice, you have missing areas here. I'm just going to tuck these in for you.
Thanks.
Just so we can see a little bit better. So we have the capacity to work 360 degrees around the body. So if you look, This ring, if you turn to your left, keep going, bring this over top. I'll keep going, just go all the way around here. Then you pick up any motion here, keep turning to your left. And then we have this ring here, and then keep turning to your left. 360, we can challenge 360 any direction you want. But we're missing this component here because they have the buckle here. I don't want you to attach anything here because the buckles might break with direct resistance, which is why we give you the extensor strap. So this can be used to either attach a resistance to you, say you don't have enough carabiners with you and you've got 2 here if you need, but it'll also enable you to use those missing degrees. Now I got that 360 effect. Or I can use it to attach a resistance that doesn't have its own attachments. So now I have this here. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to show you a couple of little things here. So I'm just going to use this as a slide.
All right.
So one of the things I really stress, because as I got into biomechanics, I started understanding forces and force angles and moment arms a little bit better. I am no genius when it comes to this by any means. But I started to notice that adding torque will change the resistance. If you add a moment arm, increase the moment arm, you'll increase resistance. And so I wanted a way to manipulate that to my benefit, to either regress or progress an exercise. So we actually have 3 levels. So we're going to increase the muscular recruitment. If I pull from here, he's going to feel it differently than if I pull from here.
Yeah, more for the top of the trunk.
Yep, and I'm recruiting more segments of the spine as well than if I pull from here. It might not seem like much, but it actually makes a big difference in torque. So I actually have built-in resistance levels that you can just change by moving where your strap is. So if I'm pulling Rick from here, he has to resist with left trunk rotation, or right trunk rotation, my apologies. And he's actually focusing on the muscles of the back. There's muscles in every single quadrant, all 4 quadrants, that do rotation. But now I'm skewing it to where I'm targeting more the posterior side, the back muscles.
It's really huge important, especially for desk jockeys. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you're always so forward, everybody needs to work on the back. And putting it on, a lot of times people feel they automatically sit up a little bit straighter. It's hard not to, because if you don't, you feel it kind of it should not pinch anywhere. But so if he's here, now he's resisting with right trunk rotation. If he comes towards me, that means I won. So he can do any number of exercises. We could start this seating. We could start this standing. We can do this kneeling. Wherever you feel you might need help in is what we can do. That's up to the trainer. That's up to your personal individual needs. Now we can isolate. If you were seated, we could isolate and just work trunk rotation. So just arms here, and now rotate to your right. And now that's pure trunk rotation. He's using his hips a little bit to do the motion. And that could be considered integration if you like. So now you're using hips and trunk together, or you can separate. So if he keeps that right hip forward and now rotate to the right.
Right hip forward.
No, yeah.
Right.
And squeeze that left glute. I tell you what, why don't you put your right leg slightly forward, stagger step like an athletic stance, squeeze that left glute, and now rotate to your right. And that kind of separates top and bottom, trunk and pelvis. So he can isolate it that way more. He can integrate it by using the hips with the action. But notice how we took the arms out of the equation completely. So now, let's say you were missing a limb. You could still get a lot of challenge in this aspect without having to use an arm that has its components for that. So he can do rotational component. Now, if he was doing, say, a sled walk, or even like on a cable machine walking, you can walk backwards, you can walk forwards. And so now you're challenging your core in motion. So if you walk backwards a little bit, I'll walk with you. And then walk forward if you were on a cable machine. He could also turn to his left now. So I could challenge from here. I could challenge directly here. So now if you do a lateral walk, now you get your whole lateral, there we go. All those lateral flexors, all those hip abductors and adductors with each step that you do. And
largely important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, especially for walking and running, everything. And sitting, believe it or not. Now, if he keeps turning to the left, he didn't have to unattach, and now he's working on his left trunk rotators. And now he's focusing on the anterior musculature. Remember we said we had muscles in every single quadrant? Now we're skewing the resistance to those abs that everybody wants. Those oblique muscles, the girdle, the TVA, the transverse abdominis, all these guys are engaged now, which can actually help tighten up your core a little bit. If we wanted to just do pure, now this adds a rotational, whatever level will add a rotational component to the exercise. If I want to just straight on, just push everything, I go right down the middle. Now it's more of a bilateral focus. Pure sagittal plane, if you like to think in those terms. And back to center.
Nice.
And go ahead and face me again. So this is one way we can do it. And once again, remember we have this aspect here. If I wanted to do just pure back, I could do this here. And he could do walks. He could also, and back up. Now I don't have the big elastic band, but he could also do deadlifts. If I had this down here, and now you're going to challenge it at the end range. If I go here at the end of the lift, let's say you can either do it without weight in your hand.
Instead of coming forward, challenge that backwards, right?
So now you're getting challenged at the end of the motion, because usually that's where it's easiest, right? It's harder at the bottom.
Right. And then coming back up.
Yes.
Mind the crunchy knees.
Yes. I heard it from here. So, or he could do squats. So let's say I didn't have any weights with me, but I did have an elastic band. I could attach this to something down below, and he could do squat, just pure squat.
I guess that's something else I need to work on too. But it's truly a 360. Yeah.
So you could do squats if you want to just pure squats, like traditional belt squat. And this is a way to progress, because we could actually take this up the next level and even the next level. It's a little bit more difficult. You got to remember you got to progress to that. You got to prepare for those type of exercises. And I don't recommend it for the beginner, because it's a lot of stress on the low back. But it's something you can do, especially if you don't have a belt squat at your facility and you need to unload the spine, but you still need to do squats. It's one way to kind of reduce that load a little bit on the vertebrae.
Nice.
What you could also do, which people don't think about, a single leg squat. So if you face me, now he can challenge his squats in a whole nother way. You can either do single leg or even double leg. Just a regular squat, and now you have a new challenge to your body. Now you have a rotational component, which if you go to pick up something, how often is it directly in the middle underneath you? Not very often.
Not often, right.
So this is one way to kind of get better at handling uneven loads. So that way you can be prepared for it. Your body can learn to adapt, react, absorb force, redirect force. And this is just in a more of a static environment.
Right.
But if we wanted you to get better in a moving pattern, say you have like a Vertimax or a Raptor or some type of bungee system or a cable system, then you can do lunges to the left, lunges to the right. You can do jump to stabilization if you wanted to do, and lateral. Yep. And if you face the camera there, and now if you do jump to the left, jump to the right.
Oh.
So there's a whole, now this becomes much
So my balance is off.
That's because I don't have an elastic, I only have a static resistance. Right. So now this will actually kind of create a dynamic environment, which is really hard to train. That's one of the things that I found in that interview is few people have a way to train and progress the core. I'm going to do this one here. Dynamically in motion. They don't have a lot. They might put a belt on, but usually the belt's only at the hip,
right,
which is great for different things. But if you wanted to challenge balance, stability, and endurance in the core itself, and to train it and progress it, especially in sprinting, running, even just carrying a rucksack, like it's a way to progress that slowly. Like maybe you're not ready for that. Like maybe you're coming back from an injury.
Oh yeah.
or maybe you need a little challenge, or you've done 1,000 of them, you need something else to kind of keep that core strong and stable, especially with an imbalance. So let's say you're carrying something and it moves. So this is a way that even if you had a partner, I could be pulling you. If you face the camera, then I can try to pull you off, and I can move this up to the top. Unfortunately, the top one only goes forward to back. If I pulled this way, it would come off his shoulder. But I could be over here dynamically and pulling him this way, and then he can turn away from me. He didn't have to unload, and now he's got this, and I could be pulling him here. If he gets on his hands and knees, he could do, say, crawls. You can do bear crawls with the different resistance. You pull away from me. If you face the camera and you do, let me move this down, because if you're doing bear crawls, now you have a lateral component. So I could pull you off balance this way. I could challenge you in so many different directions, and also simultaneously. And if I had a buddy, I could put a resistance on this side too, so now I have two competing forces. So I can move you back and forth. And if we wanted to work on the hips themselves, as I was telling you, so so one of the things we could do here, so if you're working on balance and stability in a rehab setting, a lot of people use an inline, inline test for developing.
FMS?
That's one thing, but like PT they use something else, but I forget the term. So they use this as a component. So all I have to do is just increase the resistance, and I can either test him on his stability, balance, endurance, how long does it last before you fall apart, or I can increase the strength, or just add like odd multiple resistances unexpected. So we can kind of get you that way. But if you want to focus on hip musculature, so if he's here, he's resisting me with right trunk rotation. Correct. Now if he stood on one leg, this is something we use a lot. So right now he's standing on his left leg. If he relaxed his hip, he would go into internal rotation. So he has to resist with external rotation of the hip, which is a great way to activate and warm up all the hip musculature that does external rotation. Glute max, all the external hip rotators, a lot of these drivers on that left side. If he stood on his right side, especially when you're facing the resistance, things change when you face away. Now he's using all of his hip internal rotators. So this has so many different capacities in either athletic stance and athletic training, to get those hip internal rotators activated and challenge them in this dynamic motion.
I can really feel that on here. Yeah.
Yes. So he has to resist with his internal rotators, because if I won, and if he relaxes his hip, he's going to rotate the hips that way, or actually towards me. Actually, no. We'll figure that out. So we can challenge it in so many different ways. So the single leg stance is one way to start the progression. This is in a static position. It gets that isometric strength, which can transfer into multiple angles, not just in this position. And then you can progress it to walks or runs or sprints even, and still have that dynamic challenge and force those muscles to engage. And it actually can help open up range of motion at the hips. I've had a lot of cornerbacks, people that need to open up the hips, baseball players, they need to open up the hips. For whatever reason, if your hips are tight, this is one way to get those muscles to work better so they can do their job better, and you can open up the range naturally without stretching. Like that's a whole nother talk.
That's a big thing, like on base, that I was going to deal with. Everybody else has those little short choppy steps when they end up doing their run, so that would actually be beneficial to help everybody try to open up that hip more and get that extension.
Usually people feel even just a couple of as a warm up, they do like 6-second holds. They do 5 or 6 reps in every position, and all of a sudden their hips feel a little bit looser. I've seen people squat improve by doing this, because it was able to not only engage their hip, they could get deeper without the tuck under, or they can get rid of the pinch in their hip. There's a lot of things that it did to help prepare for exercise. Nice. And then you can challenge it. You can prepare, activate, you can increase endurance, you can also increase strength by just overloading the system. And if he stands and faces the perpendicular to me, face the camera. If you stood on your left leg, That'll challenge all his abductors. If he stands on his right leg, now that's going to challenge his adductors, which all these need to be used to transfer forces, to be strong and stable, sitting, standing, running, so many different aspects that can be improved by more targeted, and especially if you want to go functional, that's a real functional way to actually challenge it without using other body parts to do so.
Right. Great explanation. Appreciate that.
Oh.
I'm sure the rest of the audience would agree as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
So one of the things that we had to do is this sucker had to fit good. Because when we start to add a rotational component, the last thing we wanted was for this to slide around and defeat the purpose. Because if this ends up in the middle, you're not getting rotation at all. So we had to make sure it was adjustable to fit multiple sizes, especially if you had different athlete sizes. It only takes a little bit to adjust. If you line them up by size, then you don't have to adjust much at all. But we had to make sure it fit really, really, really well. How's it fit?
Oh,
make sure, just in case.
Make sure I'm
not just talking. Yeah. So that's great. One of the things that we really had to have done, because my original designs would slide around. They were easier, they were less adjustable, but the mechanics of the motion, it was not getting what we needed. And we need that rotational component, because
something that's tight. Yeah.
And to be able to add rotational resistance is not easy, and that's one of the key things that we really needed out of this.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So one really nice thing, everything else is really snug. It doesn't go and slide, so you're not going to go and get any kind of chafing. And what the big thing is, especially for military populations, you have to worry about our back a whole lot more. So those that end up doing a lot of ruck marches or end up having really popular now for like the Murph, everybody ends up having the extra weight on your back. Well, that spinal compression goes and takes the load off of it with the Ki-RO. So you can end up going and loading up the hips and the rest of like the quads and hamstrings to actually develop that strength and power and that forward momentum with the Ki-RO, instead of having a ruck on your back and worrying about a little back pain that you end up having later. You know, a little fun fact, I was 5'11" when I got into the Army, and when I left, I was 5'9". Due to spinal compression, using a lot more for these ruck marches, trying to be all high speed. So hopefully somewhere along the way, this will actually take that component out to still build that lower body strength that all the rest of the high speeds need, and take a little bit more of the load off, and end up having a little bit better of a balance, so we have to worry about that core. So more like the core support and population, like what the population of SOF, Special Operations Forces, how would this go and help them develop a better core and strengthen the musculature, as opposed to like having like spinal compression with a heavy pack on?
Okay, so I understand that having a heavy pack and using a rucksack is necessary. You have to be able to handle that load in all different types of environment.
For the mission, yep.
Absolutely. So this is something that could either complement or supplement that action. Supplement in a sense of, if say you were injured or you're not able to load the spine. Let's say you had an injury and you're not able to load the spine, but you still, you don't want to give up. You don't want to not do it, and you just want to bowl through it. Well, if we do it, we can maybe do it a little bit smarter and not add the load, and maybe get you back in action a little faster.
Right, still work the lower body as needed to for
absolutely,
it, right?
And without re-aggravating your problem by loading it with the rucksacks. This is a way that you can actually challenge the core, even in motion with running or in a more stable environment, by challenging the core and actually challenging those muscles that you need to hold the rucksack up. And then it can also complement to where you can actually kind of keep, if you're doing your rucksack runs, you can actually maybe take a day or two to actually use the Ki-RO to challenge the core, the muscles that you might not have used during the rucksack, but that you need to make it easier and lighter. So you get that core involved and a little bit more specifically, a little more challenging. Those muscles can get stronger, and that can actually make the rucksack lighter and maybe even add endurance for your runs.
Nice. And that would be really good for training, prior to any special operations or any other kind of special training for airborne, air assault, ranger, SF, anything else that you go to.
And then you can also just throw this in your pack. This can roll up, it can be really small. You can roll up real tight. You just need a resistance band or two. You don't even need a band if you just have a strap. You can actually, and it's really light.
There you go. Folds down really well.
Yep.
Yep.
You can do tons of isometrics. Let's say you don't have an elastic band with you, you just have a rope or some type of paracord, then you can actually use that and just do tons of isometrics and resist that whole core, and you can get maximum contractions that way too.
Nice. Thank you for that. So it's a really versatile thing, especially for deployments and other types of training that you are out into the field. I mean, you see how small that you can go and pack it into. Plus, having a band's not going to make it that much more cumbersome to put it in your pack with everything else. And it's light, so you don't have to worry about the extra weight trying to go and carry it and lug it out to where you're going.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to go and talk with me and doing my first interview. You know, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Or we out of touch. We're too close.
But was there anything else that you wanted to go and add for the Ki-RO on how it can go and help and why people should, you know, think about it for their own health and fitness?
I've been very fortunate to get a lot of positive feedback. I even had my cousin. She's let's say over 60, and she was having hip problems, and she started using it, just the most basic things I could show her on a video chat, and she says it's been helping her hips.
Fantastic.
I've had a lot of people give me different feedbacks. It depends on what their goals are. I had a deadlifter that was trying to increase his deadlift. He engaged his core in one session. He wasn't breaking 200, and I got a hold of him he was just did 185. I'm like, he was one of my dummies. Like, I'm like, you're supposed to be my guinea pig. You're supposed to be using this in between sets. So he started to activate in between sets, and that day he stopped at 265 in one session. Never breaking 200 before.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Above and beyond.
Above and beyond. Okay. So Louis Simmons had a great quote on Joe Rogan one time where he says, if you have 600-pound legs but a 400-pound back, how much are you going to squat? 400 pounds. So if that's your weak link, it could be anything in the body that's affecting you, but if that's your weak link.
And that limiter, yeah,
and that
for the rest of you, right.
And because also you use a lot of other muscles instead of just that area. So when my friend was deadlifting and he focused on just that area, he was able to activate and engage it to where he actually rose up the level to his legs that day.
Wow. And
the following week he stopped at, I think, 290. So it doesn't I can't guarantee that's for everybody. Oh my gosh.
Results may vary.
But it was interesting to see how that was his weak link. And so I've seen that so many times in a lot of my athletes, or just in people, general population, where if that was their weak link, like how could you tease that out of the equation? They say train motions, but sometimes you have to train muscles, or you have to train a little bit more specific area, because if the strong gets strong, the weak might not be contributing to the action that you're doing. So they'll never rise up as the same level sometimes. For everybody's different. Some people it might be exactly what they needed to do. But if that was your weak link and you're able to actually target it and bring it up to the rest of the body, then everything works better. The shoulders work better. The hips work better. So we've had a lot of success when people start to integrate it and use it, and a lot of little aches and pains that they had. I can't guarantee that. Like, everybody's different. So I don't want to say it's a cure-all, but it's a tool that when used appropriately, it can be helpful and complement rehab. It can help by strength training. It can help in the prehab portion as you prepare for exercise. And I love the ability for it to. One of the things I worry about, just not aside from people that don't have the body parts that they might want. I have a special friend of mine who was in my mind when I was creating this. But if you just had surgery, or you just had abdominal surgery, or women that have had a C-section, once they get to a certain rehab stage, they need to contract the muscles, but it might hurt. Or they had spinal surgery and they're not allowed to rotate, but they still need to challenge your rotators. And this is the way you can do it safely, from a pound of pressure up to a couple hundred pounds if you wanted. But it's all varies as to what can you do. And this is a way to keep you off the floor if you can't get on the floor. It's a way to enable you to challenge motions and combine motions in areas that you weren't supposed to do, but now you can. And so you can progress to where, okay, now I can do traditional exercises.
Up to the level you should be at.
At the level. So it's not jumping from 0 to 60 by saying, okay, you just have, all right, now we're going to do this.
Skipping the rest of the process along the way, right?
You can do really, really small steps or take big jumps if you want.
That's good. Well, cool. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to us and for my first little interview podcast, that you will. So,
thank you so much for having me. Thank you for taking the time. For helping me share this, because I really think it could help a lot of people.
Oh yeah, especially military and veterans. Yeah, this is like a really big untapped, field that everybody in that should really gravitate toward, for themselves.
And
so yeah,
that's
really
a
appreciate
really special population. I've never been in the military, but I have such a tremendous amount of respect for them that I admire so much of what people have done and the sacrifices. And if I can help just a little bit, that means so much to me to be able to contribute to something. Because we we can give money, but sometimes time and effort is much more valuable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you like that, hit me with the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. See you next time.
Subscribe.
So I'm going to put the link in the description below of everything else for the Ki-RO and Kika's Mela Therapeutics.
Yes, sir.
And then you can go and check it out for yourself. And throw you a bone. Try to go check it out and let us know what you think. Thanks.